Hello class, we are in chapter 7.4, learning about the 8 planets in our solar system. As we are learning about the 8 planets in our solar system, we do have to know that our 8 planets are divided into 2 different groups. Our first group in our 8 planets is going to be known as the inner planets, which are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Those 4 planets are the first 4 planets in our solar system, are the ones that are closest to the sun. Now moving on, our second group is going to be known as the outer planets, which are the last 4 planets in our solar system. We have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So we do have to know that it is divided into 2 different groups, the inner planets and the outer planets. Now first off, let's go and learn about our first inner planet, which is Mercury. Now what do we have to know about Mercury? Obviously, we have to know that it is the closest planet to the sun. But one thing that you do have to note is that just because it is the closest planet to the sun, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the hottest planet in our solar system. There is another planet which is considered the hottest planet, and we are going to learn that in our next slide. But first off, we do have to know that Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. Another thing, and very interesting, is that the temperature difference in that planet is very high. That means one side of Mercury is going to be super hot, but the other side of Mercury is going to be super cold. The reason why is because one side will always face the sun, but the other side of Mercury will never face the sun. That means the side that is facing the sun is super hot, but the other side that will never face the sun will be what? Very, very cold. So that is our first inner planet. Our next planet is going to be Venus. We are still in our inner planets. Now, Venus is known as the brightest planet in the sky. And if you want to add this bullet point next, go ahead and add that it is also known as the hottest planet in the sky. So it's the brightest planet in the sky and also the hottest planet in the sky. Now, why? Why is Venus the brightest planet in the sky and not Mercury? The reason why is because it has a blanket of clouds that will trap the sunlight. So Venus has this blanket that will allow light to go through, but if light wants to come back, it can't come back, but it will reflect back to the planet. So it's like ping pong. So it will let the light go through, but as it is bouncing back, it will just bounce back again, bounce back again, bounce back again, and that sunlight is trapped inside, and that's why it's known as the brightest planet in the sky and at the same time the hottest, because light is trapped inside that certain planet. Now moving on, Venus is also known as the twin planet to Earth, and the reason why is because the size of Venus is almost the same size as our planet, which is Earth. Now moving on to our next planet, which is going to be our most familiar one, it's going to be Earth. Now there's only one thing that you do have to know about Earth, is that it is the only planet in our solar system that is actually suitable for life. God created Earth, and God placed Earth in the right position. If Earth was in the position of Venus, it was going to be so hot for us to live. But if Earth was actually positioned where Mars is, it's going to be too far from the sun, which is going to be too cold for us. So God placed Earth in the right spot for us to live, which is going to make that it is the only planet in our solar system that is suitable for life. Now moving on to our next planet, our last inner planet, which is going to be Mars. Now Mars is known as the red planet. Sometimes you will look at the sky and actually see a red star, and you might say, is that Mars? It could be Mars. It could be Mars. So, but there is another star that we did learn about in our constellations that is also confused as Mars because it's also a red star. But whenever you look at the sky, if you see a red star, just assume that it might be Mars. So it is known as the red planet. And one thing that we do know about Mars is that it's covered with rocky swept deserts. It has large craters and it has volcanoes. Now, people thought in the past that we could actually find life in Mars. So they've created spacecraft also known as Vikings the First and Vikings the Second, which landed on Mars and is actually taking pictures of Mars. That's why we actually have close-up pictures of Mars, and we actually know how Mars looks like. And that's when we realized, and that's when we knew that there is no life in Mars. Again, God created Earth for us to live. It's placed in the right spot. Mars is gonna be too cold. Venus is gonna be too hot. So Mars, we cannot find life because it's gonna be what? Too cold for us to live. Now, people do say though, Mars is gonna be our next planet where we are going to live in the future. We are not going to be able to live in the future in Mars is because there's no water. There's no oxygen. We cannot live without water because more than 75% of our body is what? Water. And then we have um, oxygen. Can we live without oxygen? No, we can't. So Mars is not going to be our second planet that we're going to live in the future. So we did learn about the inner planets. First up, we have Mercury, the first planet, then Venus, Earth, and Mars. Those are the inner planets. Now moving on to our outer planets. Let's go learn about our first outer planet, which is known as Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. It's going to be super huge compared to Earth. It's going to be super huge compared to Venus or Mercury or Mars. As you can see in that picture, you do see a great red spot. That great red spot actually is 3 times as large as the size of Earth. But in that picture, the great red spot looks very small compared to a planet. But in that little spot, you can fit 3 Earths. Now imagine though, how big is Jupiter compared to Earth? Now what's happening inside that great red spot? We do have to know what's happening inside that great red spot, and it's actually a rotating storm very similar to a hurricane with huge thunderstorms. That means if you are in that great red spot, you will experience a non-stop hurricane the entire time. But it's not just only winds, but it's going to be also with thunderstorms. So that would be a place that we don't want to go to if we were to live in Jupiter. Now moving on to our next outer planet. This could be actually one of our favorite planets, but it is actually known as Saturn. Saturn is actually the second largest planet. So our first largest planet is Jupiter. Then we have Saturn, which is the second largest planet. It's actually one of our favorite ones. It could be one of your favorite ones. It's because of what? Its rings. So its rings will make it look very pretty. So it has 7 bands of rings that will surround the planet. Now, but one thing that we do have to know about that planet is this special moon that Saturn has. This moon is also known as Titan. This moon is larger than Mercury. At the same time, it has its own atmosphere. So a moon having its own atmosphere and being larger than an actual planet. So people in the past though actually thought that they could find life in this moon as well. The reason why is because of what? It has its own atmosphere. Did they find life? No, they did not. Just like I said, God did place Earth in the right spot for us to live. Now moving on to our next outer planet is going to be Uranus. Now Uranus was actually discovered by Sir William Herschel. We do have to know the name, so we do have to know Sir William Herschel, who discovered Uranus. Now we do have to know also that it's the 3rd largest planet in our solar system. One important fact that you do have to know, and very interesting, is that Uranus is actually tipped over on its side, with its poles pointing directly toward and away from the sun. So it will actually orbit. One interesting fact about it is that it will orbit backwards. Very cool. So as the planets are orbiting clockwise, Uranus is actually orbiting what? Counterclockwise. It's gonna orbit backwards. So that's one thing that we do have to know. Very interesting though. Why is Uranus the only planet that actually orbits backwards? And why is Uranus the only planet which is actually tipped over on its side? That's actually a question that I want to ask God when I go to heaven. Why did he make Uranus tipped over on its side, and why is that the only planet that will orbit backwards? Is there a reason why? Will it help Earth to orbit correctly? Will it help the sun? Will it help the other planets? I am not exactly sure. So I do want to ask God why. Why did he create Uranus to be tipped over on its side, and why does it orbit backwards? Now, moving on to our last outer planet is going to be Neptune. Now, Neptune, scientists believe that Neptune consists largely of liquid waters because that certain planet is blue. So scientists think that that certain planet is only full of what? Water, because it's known as the blue planet. Now, it has the strongest winds measured anywhere in our solar system. So I did talk about the Great Red Spot, that you will find a non-stop hurricane with huge thunderstorms. But Neptune will actually have even stronger winds than those that you can find in the Great Red Spot in Jupiter. So it has the strongest winds measured anywhere in the solar system. And one moon that you do have to know is known as Triton. It has its own magnetic field and a very, very thin atmosphere. Now, do scientists believe they will find life in this certain moon? Some do, but some say no. Because it's what? Just way too far away from the sun. And that gives us a reason to why did God place Earth there? Why did God make Earth be the third planet in our solar system? And just like I talked to you about, and that's something we do have to realize as we grow up, as we are learning about planets, is that God has a plan. And God has a plan to why God placed Mercury as the first planet in our solar system. God has a plan to why he wanted Neptune to have the strongest winds. And God had a plan to why he wanted Earth to be the third planet. Again, because it was the right spot for us to live. So we do have our inner planets, with our Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, and we have our outer planets, which are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. We do have to know those planets, and we have to know their characteristics. So make sure you do read chapter 7.4, and after you're done reading, what you are going to do, you're going to go to the last page 191 and do the comprehension check 7.4. Goodbye.